Avoidants don't pull away because you loved too deeply, texted too much, cared too sincerely, or showed too much affection. They pull away because their ego, the shield they've relied on their entire life, feels threatened by the emotional closeness you offer. Most people misunderstand avoidance, believing they are detached, cold, or indifferent. But the truth is far more complex, far more human, and far more fragile. Avoidants are not running from you. They are running from the version of themselves that intimacy forces them to confront. And when their ego feels exposed, even slightly, they retreat. Not because they don't care, but because they care far more than they are willing to admit. Avoidants grow up learning one core emotional rule. The safest place is distance. Distance makes them feel in control. Distance protects them from being hurt, disappointed, abandoned, or engulfed. Distance keeps their ego intact. So whenever someone gets too close, whenever someone sees too much of their heart, whenever emotions rise beyond what their ego can handle, their reflex is withdrawal, not rejection. Their ego whispers, "Protect yourself," long before their heart whispers, "Stay." Every avoidant has an inner narrative shaped by past experiences. People leave. Love is unpredictable. If I depend on someone, I'll lose myself. If I get too close, I'll get hurt. These beliefs live deep in their subconscious, and their ego acts as the guard dog keeping those fears from being triggered. When you show them genuine love, consistency, or intimacy, their ego doesn't interpret it as comfort. It interprets it as risk. Their logic shuts down. Their mind goes into survival mode. Their walls rise, their emotional body freezes. And the avoidant pulls back not because your love is wrong, but because your love touches wounds they've never healed. But here is the deepest truth. Avoidants don't shut down because of your behavior. They shut down because intimacy exposes the limits of their ego. The ego tells them they don't need help, don't need closeness, don't need vulnerability. But when they feel real emotional connection with you, their ego senses danger. It senses that if they let themselves feel too much, they might finally need someone. And needing someone is the very thing their entire ego structure was built to prevent. So they pull away, act cool, act distant, act unaffected, act like nothing changed. But inside, everything changed. Your closeness awakened something in them. Something warm, something vulnerable. Something they cannot show without cracking their armor. And rather than letting that emotion come forward, they run back to the safety of their ego. This is where most people misunderstand the avoidant completely. They take the withdrawal personally. They believe the avoidant didn't care, didn't value them, didn't want them. But withdrawal in avoidance is often the opposite of indifference. It is evidence of internal overwhelm. They are not avoiding you. They are avoiding their own emotional reaction to you. Their ego is trying to save them from the intimacy they secretly crave. Avoidants want connection, but they fear losing control inside it. They want closeness, but they fear being emotionally seen. They want love, but they fear the vulnerability love requires. All of these desires live underneath the surface, hidden beneath layers of defenses, suppressed under years of self-protection. And the moment someone like you comes into their life, someone emotionally open, sincere, consistent, and loving, they feel the very thing they have always wanted, and the very thing they fear the most. Their ego becomes fragile in this moment. Even the smallest hint that you understand them too well hurts their ego. Even the smallest moment of emotional exposure hurts their ego. Even the smallest sign that you could see past their defenses hurts their ego. Because their ego's entire job is to maintain control, distance, and emotional independence. And it fails when they meet someone who touches their heart. This is why the avoidant pulls away, not because you were too much, but because their ego is too fragile to handle being cared for. Not because you overwhelmed them, but because the emotions you stirred inside them overwhelmed their defenses. When you understand this, everything changes. Their behavior stops feeling like rejection and starts looking like fear. You stop feeling powerless and start seeing the truth. You didn't scare them away. Their own ego did. And the moment that ego feels threatened, the avoidant runs, not from love, but from the possibility of finally needing it. The moment you stop chasing an avoidant, stop over-explaining, stop proving your worth, and stop trying to fix the emotional gaps they created, something inside them shifts instantly. And this shift is what quietly hurts their ego in a way nothing else ever has. Avoidants don't crumble because you yell, confront, or demand. Their ego doesn't break when you express pain or disappointment. Their ego gets shaken when you finally embody the one thing they never expected from you, indifference rooted in self-respect. Cause an avoidance ego depends on a predictable dynamic. They feel safe when they know you're available. They feel stable when they know you want them more than they want you. They feel in control when they sense your emotional investment is stronger than theirs. They need this imbalance, not consciously, but psychologically, because it protects them from exposing their own vulnerability. As long as you are the one reaching, they can stay guarded. As long as you are the one holding the emotional weight, they can relax into avoidance. As long as you are trying, they don't have to. But the moment your energy shifts, the entire dynamic flips. It doesn't require a speech, a breakup message, or a dramatic exit. It often happens quietly, internally, in a moment when you simply realize, I'm done chasing someone who doesn't meet me halfway. And without telling them, you change how you show up. You speak with calm instead of emotional urgency. You give shorter replies instead of paragraphs. You stop initiating. You stop asking where things stand. You stop performing emotional labor. You stop shrinking yourself to keep the peace. This shift is small on the outside, but on the inside, something massive happens in the avoidance psychological world. They lose the emotional safety net they never acknowledged but deeply relied on. Avoidants don't consciously think they're pulling away. They feel it. It hits their body before it hits their mind. Your silence feels different than before, not like a wounded pause, but like confidence. Your distance feels different, not like punishment, but like peace. Your tone feels different, not like longing, but like neutrality. And this neutrality is what hurts their ego more than anything else, because their ego is built around the illusion that they are the emotionally stronger one, the one who cares less, the one who can walk away, the one who has the upper hand. When you stop giving them the emotional reassurance they were unconsciously feeding on, their ego feels a quiet, undeniable sting. I don't control this anymore. That is the moment everything shifts internally for the avoidant. Their ego realizes you're not the version of yourself they once knew, the one who tried, explained, waited, hoped, and held on despite their inconsistency. You're someone new now, someone who holds boundaries, someone who doesn't beg for connection, someone who no longer needs them to feel whole. This realization doesn't make them angry, it makes them uneasy. It doesn't make them cocky, it makes them curious. It doesn't push them away, it pulls them in. Because avoidants are drawn to what they can't fully hold. They're drawn to strength that doesn't demand. They're drawn to energy that doesn't cling. They're drawn to people who choose them without needing them. People who give them space without disappearing from themselves. Your shift forces them to confront a truth they never wanted to face. Adjoined, you were the emotionally valuable one all along. Their ego doesn't break because you left. It breaks because you didn't break when they pulled away. They expected you to crumble, you didn't. They expected you to wait. You didn't. They expected you to reach again. You didn't. And now their ego feels something new, something they never expected to feel about you has respect. Avoidants don't respect the people who tolerate emotional neglect. They respect the people who refuse to stay small. When you hurt their ego through self-respect, the avoidant doesn't lose interest. They lose comfort. And losing that comfort awakens a desire they cannot suppress. They start wondering about you, thinking about you, imagining you with someone else, worrying someone might value what they overlooked. In that moment, they don't see your distance as rejection. They see it as rarity. They see you as the one person who wouldn't let them get away with emotional laziness. They see you as someone who forces them, without force, to show up better. Your self-respect didn't hurt their ego because it was cruel. It hurt their ego because it exposed the truth. The real power was never in their distance. It was always in your ability to walk away from it. When you stop chasing an avoidant, something happens that they never expected. You become unreadable, and nothing unnerves an avoidant more than emotional uncertainty. Emotional unpredictability disrupts the entire system they rely on to stay in control. Because avoidants are not afraid of love itself, they are afraid of losing control within love. When your behavior stops matching the pattern they're used to, their mind begins to race, their ego feels threatened, and their emotions, the ones they thought were buried, start rising to the surface. For the longest time, the avoidant understood you, not because you were weak, needy, or predictable, but because your love was clear. Your effort was consistent, your emotional investment was visible, your availability was reliable. This gave them a sense of silent security. You were the stable force they could push away from without losing. You were the safe emotional anchor they could distance themselves from without fear. You were the reassurance that even if they withdraw, disconnect, or delay, you would still be there. But when you stop chasing, truly stop, you remove the very thing their avoidance depended on: your emotional certainty. Your energy goes quiet. Your presence becomes lighter. Your communication becomes minimal. Your heart becomes guarded but peaceful. Your emotional availability becomes selective rather than automatic. And in that shift, they feel something they've spent their whole life avoiding. Emotional risk. Avoidants crave emotional stability but fear emotional intimacy. They want connection without losing their autonomy. They want closeness without vulnerability. So when you were consistent, they felt safe but overwhelmed. When you step back, they feel unsafe but intrigued. It flips their emotional world upside down. They don't know how to interpret your silence anymore. They don't know how to interpret your distance. They don't know how to interpret your new calm, your new self-protection, your new boundaries. And avoidants do not know how to function when they cannot read someone they care about. They start asking themselves questions they've never asked before. Why did they change? Did I push too far? Are they done with me? Is someone else in the picture? Did they move on? Was I wrong about their feelings? These are not questions of arrogance. They are questions of fear masked behind ego, because avoidants depend on emotional predictability to maintain the illusion of control. When you remove that predictability, it shocks their system. Suddenly, they see you differently. They feel you differently. They sense a version of you they've never met before. A version that is whole on your own, emotionally grounded, intentional, and no longer emotionally at their mercy. This is where the obsession begins. Avoidants do not obsess over people who chase them. They obsess over people whose energy they cannot fully grasp. Your emotional detachment becomes magnetic because it's unfamiliar. It's the one thing they cannot push against. It forces them out of autopilot. It forces them into self-awareness. It forces them to feel something they spend their lives resisting: vulnerability. Your calm confuses their ego. Your silence disarms their defenses. Your distance exposes their fear of loss. Your independence reminds them of your value. Your emotional absence reminds them of their emotional need. And the avoidant begins to study you. Not the way someone studies a threat, but the way someone studies a mystery they want to understand. They notice small things they never noticed before. Your tone, your boundaries, your presence, your self-worth. They become hyper-attuned to the subtle shifts in your behavior, trying to decode the new emotional language you're communicating. For the first time, they become the one emotionally activated. For the first time, they become the one watching you more than you watch them. For the first time, where they become the one questioning their behavior. For the first time, they feel the distance they created, and they don't like it. The most shocking part to them is this: you didn't become cold. You didn't become angry. You didn't become dramatic. You simply became unavailable. And that is the one thing avoidants cannot ignore. Because avoidants are not afraid of losing love. They are afraid of losing emotional access. When they sense that access slipping, the ego gets rattled. The heart awakens. The mind becomes restless. And the person who once seemed distant, detached, and hard to move suddenly becomes emotionally alert. Your new energy doesn't just shock them. It makes them rethink everything they believed about you. They always assumed you would stay. They always assumed you would try. They always assumed you would understand. They always assumed you would accept their distance. But when you show them that you have a limit, that you have boundaries, that you have the power to leave, not dramatically, but quietly, they feel something deep and unfamiliar: emotional accountability. Your silence doesn't punish them. It teaches them. It reveals that the emotional power they thought they had was never real. It was borrowed from your kindness. And when you take that kindness back, the avoidant feels the one thing they've always run from: the fear of losing someone who truly mattered. Avoidants don't fall in love through closeness. They fall in love through contrast. They don't chase emotional comfort. They chase emotional intrigue. And when you stop feeding their ego, when you pull your energy inward, when you stop responding the way they expect, you trigger something deep in their psychology that even they don't fully understand. It's the hidden obsession switch. The moment their avoidance collapses into curiosity, their detachment melts into longing, and their emotional fear begins transforming into desire. And this shift doesn't happen because you pressured them. It happens because you became a mystery. A mystery their mind can't solve, a mystery their heart can't ignore. For most of your connection, the avoidant held the emotional advantage. Whether they admitted it or not, they felt emotionally safer than you. They believed your feelings were stronger. They believed they could withdraw without consequences. They believed you would always lean in while they leaned out. This imbalance made them feel comfortable, but not necessarily connected. Avoidants don't bond through ease. They bond through unpredictability that doesn't threaten their autonomy. When you were consistent, available, and emotionally expressive, they knew you. They felt secure in their assumptions. They didn't have to wonder if you still cared. They didn't have to question their role in your life. You were steady, and steady is comforting, but it doesn't challenge them. But when your energy shifts from emotional availability to emotional neutrality, something powerful awakens inside them. They feel the difference instantly. Your warmth is replaced with calm. Your eagerness is replaced with boundaries. Your pursuit is replaced with silence. Your emotional openness is replaced with emotional self-respect. And this shift creates contrast, the very thing that triggers their hidden craving. Avoidants become obsessed not when someone needs them, but when someone no longer does. It's not the loss of love that pulls them in. It's the loss of emotional certainty. When they can no longer predict you, when they can't read your reactions, when they can't assume they still have emotional access to you, their mind begins looping around you in ways it never did before. Avoidants don't obsess over people who are fully available. They obsess over people whose energy feels rare, secure, self-contained, and emotionally sovereign. Your new mystery disrupts the story they told themselves about how connection with you works. You become the one their ego can't fully manage. You become the one their defenses can't push away. You become the one their mind returns to without permission. You become the one their heart reacts to even when their ego doesn't want it to. Their obsession isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, psychological, and deeply internal. Suddenly, they find themselves replaying conversations, analyzing your silence, imagining scenarios where they reconnect with you, and trying to understand how they lost the emotional position they once held so effortlessly. They don't admit it, but they feel it. An itch they can't scratch, a tension they can't release, a curiosity they can't shut off. Your emotional mystery activates something they've spent their life suppressing, the desire to pursue. Avoidants aren't natural pursuers because pursuing requires vulnerability, risk, and emotional exposure, all things that disrupt their survival systems. But when the person they care about becomes emotionally strong, distant, and unpredictable in a grounded way, the avoidant feels a pull stronger than their fear. Your silence makes them wonder. Your boundaries make them respect you. Your emotional independence makes them value you. Your absence makes them crave you. Your unpredictability makes them attentive. Your mystery makes them restless. This is how avoidants fall, not through being chased, not through emotional intensity, but through emotional contrast that reveals your worth without demanding their validation. They begin imagining losing you, not because you threatened to leave, but because your behavior quietly showed them you could. And for an avoidant, the fear of losing someone rare and irreplaceable outweighs the fear of intimacy. Their obsession switch flips when they realize you are no longer emotionally owned by the connection. You are choosing yourself, and they must choose you back if they want to keep you. You didn't manipulate them, pressure them, or punish them. You simply evolved, and your evolution created the emotional mystery their heart can't walk away from. You can always tell when an avoidant's ego has cracked, not because they say anything, but because their behavior changes in ways they can't hide, in ways they don't fully understand themselves, and in ways you were never supposed to notice. Avoidants may suppress their emotions, but their body reveals the truth long before their words ever will. And when your distance, silence, or shift in energy shakes something inside them, their heart begins to wake up quietly, subtly, involuntarily. They don't plan it. They don't decide it. It just happens. And the signs show up in ways so small and unexpected that only someone who has lived it can recognize them. The first sign appears in their eyes, not the way they look at you, but the way they look away. Avoidants who are unaffected maintain perfect emotional composure. Their gaze is controlled, steady, detached. But when their ego is cracked, they struggle to hold eye contact for too long because eye contact exposes emotion. They'll look at you, then look away quickly, then look back again as if checking whether the connection they once relied on still exists. You'll feel the softness they're trying to hide, the curiosity they can't turn off, the vulnerability they didn't prepare for. Their eyes betray them before anything else. Then comes the shift in their voice. Avoidants normally speak with a tone that creates distance, calm, measured, almost too neutral. But when their ego has been touched, there's a subtle warmth, a softness in their tone, a gentleness they didn't intend to show. They might say something simple like, "How are you?" or "Did you get home okay?" But the emotional tone behind the words reveals everything. They suddenly care how you feel. They suddenly care how they sound. They suddenly care about the emotional space between you, a space they once avoided completely. Next, they start asking small, seemingly insignificant questions. They don't ask deep emotional questions. Avoidants never begin there. They ask safe questions that hide their real intention, checking your emotional temperature. "Did you see that thing I sent you? How's work? Are you still hanging out with your friends?" None of these questions are about the topic itself. They're about you. They're about re-establishing a connection without exposing their vulnerability. They're about seeing whether they still have a place in your world. And then, the biggest sign of all appears. They begin initiating small emotional repairs. These repairs never sound like apologies. Avoidants rarely apologize directly, but they show remorse in behavior. They might give you their full attention when they never did before. They might offer to help with something. They might remember details you mentioned long ago. They might show up where they know you'll be. These gestures are not random. They are attempts to rebuild closeness without admitting they want it. Their ego won't let them say, "I miss you," but their actions scream it. After that, you'll notice a change in their physical presence. Avoidants who don't care stay distant, physically, emotionally, mentally. But when their ego cracks, they stand closer without realizing it. They lean in when you talk. They mirror your movements. Their body softens around you. They face you fully instead of turning away. Their posture is less defensive, less guarded, less rigid. You become a gravitational pull they can't resist even if they try. One of the most powerful signs is their sudden discomfort when you show indifference. When you were emotionally available, they barely reacted. But now, if you seem neutral, distracted, distant, or disinterested, they feel it immediately. You'll see the flicker of insecurity. You'll see the panic they try to hide. You'll feel the shift in the atmosphere. Avoidants aren't afraid of losing closeness. They're afraid of losing access. And when they sense that access slipping, they become hyper-aware of your emotional state. What they're really trying to figure out underneath all these signs is one simple thing. Do you still choose me even though you don't need me? Avoidants fall for strength, not dominance, not games, not manipulation, but as inner strength, the kind that doesn't beg, cling, or collapse. And when their ego cracks, they finally see that strength in you. They finally see your boundaries. They finally see your independence. They finally see your value, not because you shouted it, but because you lived it. This is when the avoidant begins to pursue in the only way they know how, quietly, carefully, subtly, hoping you notice but terrified you might. Their small behaviors are the love letters they're too scared to write. Their gentle tone is the apology they can't speak. Their nervous eyes are the confession they don't know how to make. When an avoidant's ego cracks, their heart is no longer asleep. It's awake, aware, and afraid of losing the one person they didn't expect would ever walk away. When you stop feeding an avoidant's ego and start protecting your own value, something profound happens in the dynamic, something they never expected, something they never prepared for, and something that instantly changes how they experience you. For the first time, the avoidant feels emotionally safe with you, not because you are closer, but because you are no longer trying to pull them closer. It's the paradox they never understood. Avoidants don't feel safe when someone leans in, they feel safe when someone stands strong. Not demanding, not waiting, strong, whole, grounded. And when you embody that energy, their entire internal world shifts. Avoidants have a fear they rarely admit, the fear of emotional engulfment. The fear of disappearing inside someone else's needs. The fear of being responsible for another person's happiness. When someone chases them, pursues them, or overinvests in them, they feel pressure rather than love. They feel expectation rather than connection. They feel overwhelmed rather than understood. But when you stop feeding their ego and begin protecting your inner peace, the pressure dissolves. The emotional chase ends. The weight they carried, the fear of letting someone down, the fear of being inadequate, the fear of disappointing you, disappears. And for the first time, they can breathe around you. This breathing room is what makes them finally feel safe. Not your closeness, not your effort, not your emotional availability, your emotional independence. When you center yourself, choose yourself, and value yourself, they feel something rare. Respect mixed with relief. You're no longer asking them to be someone they're not ready to be. You're no longer waiting for them to grow at a pace they can't sustain. You're no longer tying your worth to their attention. And this frees them from the internal pressure their ego was trying to manage. Their ego softens because suddenly the energy between you is no longer about survival. It's about choice. It's about two individuals, not one person carrying the emotional weight for both. The avoidant begins to see you as someone who can stand next to them, not cling to them. Someone who can love without losing themselves. Someone who can care without collapsing. Someone they can trust, not because you give endlessly, but because you give wisely. Because you give from overflow, not from emptiness. Because you give without erasing who you are. And this is the moment they finally feel something surprising: emotional safety. Emotional safety does not come from closeness. It comes from the absence of pressure. It comes from knowing you won't punish them for needing space. It comes from knowing you won't shatter if they struggle. It comes from knowing you won't disappear into them. You become the first person who loves them without demanding their soul in return. And that makes you irreplaceable. Avoidants need to feel emotionally safe before they can feel emotionally connected. This is the piece most people miss. You think chasing them builds closeness, it actually builds pressure. You think proving your love calms them, it actually overwhelms them. You think staying available makes them feel secure, it actually robs them of the ability to choose. But when you pull back into your own life, your own goals, your own peace, they see what they never saw before. Your independence is the very thing that makes the connection safe. This realization invites them toward you, gently, naturally, without force. They start showing up in softer ways, not because they feel controlled, but because they feel safe enough to choose you. Avoidants don't pursue out of fear, they pursue out of curiosity, admiration, and emotional comfort. They pursue when they feel they won't drown in someone else's needs. They pursue when they know they have room to breathe. They pursue when they sense your heart is open but not empty, available but not desperate, warm but not boundaryless. Protecting your value teaches them something they deeply needed to learn. You are not here to complete them. You are here to complement them. You are not here to chase. You are here to connect. You are not here to fill the gaps in their ego. You are here to stand in your own power. When your energy becomes grounded, self-respecting, and emotionally sovereign, their ego softens and their heart opens in ways it never did before. They finally feel safe enough to stay, safe enough to love, safe enough to let the walls lower one layer at a time. Not because you made them feel needed, but because you made them feel understood. Not because you gave them everything, but because you finally gave yourself what you deserved. And now, for the first time, love becomes something they want, not something they fear.